So we have come to this meadow now to photograph bees and insects in flight. I've been trying to photograph insects in flight for years. I've done dragonflies mostly on manual setup cameras and autofocus setup cameras. But the OM1 takes it to a new level when it comes to insects in flight. The technology that I'm going to be talking about in this video is called Pro Capture. It will capture frames before you press the button. And that's what I'm going to be using to photograph insects in flight. So the equipment I'm using for this video is the OM Systems OM1 MK2 and the OM System M.Zuiko Digital ED 150-400 f4.5 lens. But before we settle down to do this photography, we need to find a bunch of flowers that is in a good location. And this particular location is perfect. If you can see, I have a 180-degree field. So I can go from this flower here, that flower just there, and I can come all the way around to these flowers here. So no matter where the bees land, I can get the picture. So before I bring the camera in, I'm just going to sit down here, camera height, pan out to see which flowers I can isolate from the background. There's some in front of me here that will not isolate no matter what I do. I'd have to move left or right. But we've got one here, got one there, there's one here, one there, one there, all of which can be isolated by sitting here in this particular spot. And again, I'm not having to get up and move around. And the type of flowers I'm looking for are like something like that. I then have this one here. So although we've got other flowers in the background, they are blurred out to the point where you can't really tell what they are. So I'm going to be looking out for insects landing on those particular plants. We've got one here already, look. So the technology that's going to help us capture insects in flight is called Pro Capture on the OM System cameras. On Canon cameras it's called Pre-Capture. When we half press the shutter, as you can see from the recording, the camera starts to capture images and stores them in the buffer. When we press the shutter button all the way down, it will save the first frames that are in the buffer as well as the frames that you're taking with the button down. Let's take a look at Pro Capture. So we have two different ones that we can use for this type of shot. We've got Pro Capture SH1 and Pro Capture SH2. Pro Capture SH1 will capture 120 frames a second with fixed auto-focusing and metering. And Pro Capture SH2 will do 50 frames a second with autofocus and metering. So we're going to be using Pro Capture SH2. Now, we could also adjust the settings for Pro Capture. So we take a look at Pro Capture settings. We've got maximum FPS is 50 frames a second. Now we can adjust that if we wish to. So if we want to slow it down and have less frames, we can do that. I'm going to leave mine on 50. Pre-shutter frames is how many frames it will take before you press the shutter button. I've got mine set to 50, it will go up to 99, and the amount of frames you take is dependent on the time you want. So I want about a second of frames before I take or press my shutter button, so that's going to be 50. And frame count limiter will limit the amount of frames you take after you press the button. So obviously I want that off because I want my freedom of being able to take as many frames as I want to. Now insects, they are very, very fast moving insects. So what we want to do is we want a shutter speed that will allow us to capture those insects pretty quick. Now, I want to come in here and make sure I'm on continuous autofocus plus manual focus. I don't use tracking for this. Now because we've already found our location, we know what we are going to be shooting. I'm going to start off at 1/2000 of a second. We want our aperture as wide open as possible, so on this lens it's going to be f4.5, and then our ISO, I'm going to leave that at auto because currently it's at 250, so it's doing a pretty good job at metering our scene. Now all we've got to do now is we've got to wait for a subject to come, land and take a picture of it. Now this is where we get to the interesting part, because on the OM Systems OM1 Mark II, we haven't got insect detection. Okay, so we have off, so if we want to do it manually we can, it's very hard. Human, motorsport, airplanes, trains, birds and dogs and cats. I'm going to leave it on human, see how it goes, and we're going to be adjusting this throughout the video. So there are some things you need to know about Pro Capture SH2. Your minimum shutter speed is 640 of a second. Okay, now since we're doing insects in flight, we want at least a minimum of 2000. So yeah, if you're finding that your camera is not going below 640th of a second on your shutter speed, it's probably because you've got Pro Capture turned on. And you're still sitting on there while I'm talking. Another thing to know is, let me bring down my shutter speed to say 2000, and I'm going to put up my f-stop. The maximum f-stop you can use with Pro Capture SH2 is f8. Now you can go above f8, but when you go above f8, you get a little red warning down the bottom left corner that says F. That means you're above the required f-stop for accurate autofocus. So although I can use, let's say, an f14, I don't know why you would want to, because it's a bit awful to be fair, the autofocus will be inaccurate compared to below f8. And since we're about 2 or 3 meters away from these insects, and we can blur out the background perfectly okay with f4.5, we've got everything in focus, so we don't need to be at anything above 4.5. Pro Capture is only compatible with certain lenses, so you will have to do your research to see if your lens is compatible with Pro Capture. All we got to do now is wait for a subject to come and land on our flowers. As it lands, we will half press our shutter to start capturing pre-capture, and then as it takes off, we press the button to capture 100 odd frames, and hopefully one of them will be in focus. So as I pan, I can zoom in, I can zoom out, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to observe now the flowers in front of me, see if there's a particular flower that's popular amongst the bees and the flies. I want to try and pick out a flower that's isolated from the background if we can. You see there how we've got a messy background just there, and that's not good. Come round and have a look. And again, I can remove it in Photoshop afterwards if I want to, but I want to try and get as much right in camera as possible. Yes, got one just here. Did I? It's gone. All this technology, you've still got to be quick at getting the shot. At the moment, hey? Okay, I don't want the purple one, it's too low down. Because I'm just telling the wife that we don't want to photograph the purple flowers, because if you look at the purple flowers here, it's too messy, whereas the yellow flowers are perfect. Half pressing the button, let the camera do its job, and awkwardly the bee goes in the opposite direction I would have liked it to have gone in. There we go. To be honest with you, this is a lot of fun, so I'd stick around for as long as you can, take as many images as you can, sort it out when you get back home. But what we do have to do is, once we've photographed a bee like we just did, we do have to wait for the buffer to be cleared and as written to the memory card before we continue. When I'm viewing images, I look for the EVF. So we got a nice picture of a bumblebee's ass. Yeah, we've got all the technology, it's all set up. What we got to do now is wait for a bee to land and take off in the direction that we want it in for our picture. Okay, he's here now. Zoom it out a bit. So I'm going to put the flower in the centre, so whichever way the bee goes, I can get him in flight. So my current settings now, as I've adapted and altered, is 1/4000 of a second, f4.5, and the ISO is on auto. We are at 1600. Now on a side note, I have limited this camera to an ISO of 6400. Now it will go higher than that, but you have to use denoise software. I'm currently using DxO Pure Raw 5. Let me know in the comments if you want a video about that and the reason why I've moved away from Topaz. I think everyone knows why I've moved away from Topaz, because they're a bunch of robbing bastards. So yeah, so we can reduce it. However, what I've found is when you go above 6400 ISO and you reduce the noise and grain to a susceptible level, you lose detail in your subjects. So I don't particularly want that at the moment. Now what I do want to do now is I want to adjust my exposure, because I want to expose to the right. What I want to do, I'm just going to go on to, let's say, this flower at the front here. I'm going to have a look at what my ISO is, because what I want to do now is I want to expose to the right to get the cleanest image I possibly can. So we're at around 1250 on our ISO. So what I'm going to do is, you can't expose to the right using ISO. It doesn't do anything. All it is a gain. So in the film days, ISO was the speed of the film, how sensitive it was to the light. On a modern camera, ISO is what I would call gain. Essentially, it's the same as taking your TV and turning up the brightness. Your signal is exactly the same, because that's the amount of light hitting your sensor. You're just turning up the brightness. So I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to turn off auto ISO, because I want full control. And I'm going to set it to 1600, and now I will control the exposure with my shutter speed. So if you want nice clean images, you want more light hitting your sensor. So what I'm going to do is overexpose. So let's take one of these. Conveniently, the sun's gone in, but I'm okay, because I have highlight and shadow warnings, so I know when I'm clipping my highlights. So there would be a good exposure, which is +2. Now the camera's telling you it's overexposed. It's not. We're exposing to the right, then we're going to bring it down in Lightroom afterwards to have a nice clean image. Now bear in mind that if we do that, our shutter speed is only 1/1000th, and we might not be able to freeze the action. So I'm going to go back to 1/2000th of a second at +1 on the exposure. That's going to give me a pretty nice image where the wings are slightly blurred. I don't want it completely frozen. On some images, I'm going to try freezing the wings, but that's going to give us a pretty decent exposure. And again, as the sun comes in and out, my highlight and shadow warnings will tell me if I'm overexposed, so I'm good to go. So I'm slightly overexposed there. Can you see the red highlights? That means I'm overexposed. All I've got to do is put up my shutter speed. There we go. 1/4000th of a second, f4.5. Also 1600, we're, according to our meter, we're overexposed by 1.3, but again we'll bring that down in post to have a nice clean image. All I've got to do now is wait for our models to sign their model release and get into position. If we could predict where they're going to land, we can get one coming into land. At the moment we're having to photograph it as it's taking off. The only way I could do that is to take a pair of scissors, chop all of these flowers down and leave just one flower. You got any scissors? No. Okay, here we go. Here we go, B. Frame up. Oh, I missed it. I missed that shot then. I was just getting ready to take it and they started fighting. God, he hovered there. Gotcha, in the middle. Helps to have a spotter as well, doesn't it? Oh, he's right down there, look. There he is. Oh, too late. And now he's all the way down there. No, that's a tree. Now, if you're in a field where you've just got these flowers in front of us, what we can do is come to our focus limiter just here and switch it to 1.3 to 6 meters. That will stop your camera focusing on the background. So if you find your camera is focusing too far away and having trouble, you can limit the focus doing that. So while I'm holding down the button, it's taking 50 frames and just overwrites itself in the buffer. So you can hold the button down as long as you want to, and it doesn't matter. We're just waiting for this hoverfly to take off. We've got quite a bit of a breeze today as well. Getting too bright. This will definitely freeze the wings in place. So now I'm just kind of carry on photographing these bees till we can get some shots where the bee takes off and towards the camera rather than away from us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try different subject detections. I know airplanes works pretty good for dragonflies, but I'm going to try birds now and see if there's any difference. It's quite surprising the fact that this has got so much technology in it and OM Systems didn't put insect autofocus, well, subject detection I should say. But let's see how that works. So we've now got it set to birds, you never know, it might work. And our focus area is all, so the camera gets to see anywhere in the frame to see if it will recognise it. That way I can frame it up in such a way that the hope that the bee or the fly takes off in our direction and we can reframe it afterwards in our software. Just go wait for a bee to come now. Not over there though. Want it down here. Ideally we want it down here somewhere because we've got a nice clean background then. Whereas over there we've got a black background. It just doesn't work well. Yeah, it's black background unfortunately. Well, I can say bird or subject detection is working quite well, so I might leave it on that. Oh, yeah, because my foot's hurting. So as I'm pressing down my half pressing the shutter button, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner the little arrows that are telling you it's buffering at the moment. Now while you're doing this, it will eat your battery because it's constantly taking pictures. It's just not saving them. Now, this one's facing the camera at the moment, so I'm hoping it'll take off in a minute. Where's he gone? Keep bloody still! 6,400 on the shutter speed is definitely going to freeze the insects, definitely. Just get it in focus and they go. What we got? What we got? What we got? There we go. No. God. Come on. Play nicely. Yeah, we'll be behind me, wouldn't they? Come on.
That's probably why they are behind you. She's got the camera pointing. Camera shy.
Oh, that might have been a pretty good one. It is tracking better on bird autofocus than it is on the human subject detection, which is pretty obvious really, to be fair.
No, in the middle.
I got him. The wind, oh, the wind is awful. No, I missed him. It's right to the front here, isn't he, look. No, he's gone. So for framing, I'm placing the bee on the lower thirds in the hopes it takes off above the flower so we get a nice shot. Oh. So if you're going to give this a go, you don't need a tripod, okay? The reason I'm on a tripod is because I'm recording my EVF. So if I was doing this and it wasn't for YouTube, I wouldn't have the recorder on, I wouldn't have the tripod, I'd just be freehand photographing the bees like you can see in this footage here. So it does limit me a little bit being on a tripod, but without that, you're not going to be able to see my EVF. Missed him again. Can't focus on him because he's not in frame. There we go. Go on, take off to the left. Ooh, almost. Oh yeah, I got that one then. The bees are more active than the hoverflies, that's for sure. His ass is flying away from me. I think I've probably got, you know, let's say out of all the shots I've taken, which today we've taken 3,500 images I've taken so far. Out of all of them, 90% will be blurred or just nothing in them. Out of that 10%, 90% of those 10% is with a bee's ass because they keep flying away from me. So you're looking for that 1% or 0.1% of the images where the bee is looking at you or from the side. Or not playing ball like that. So now that we've done that, we've captured some insects in flight in the field images, we now need to go home and edit the images on our computer. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. I want to thank you for getting to the end of this video. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the comment section below, and do subscribe if you like videos like this. I'm going to be doing a lot more of them in the future. But that's where I shall leave this video. My name's Stewart Wood. I'll see you in the next one.